Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining Gwinnett County Public Library for our Speech and Language Developmental Milestones series. My name is Mary Mayer, and I am an Adult Services Specialist. We are so excited to have you all here and to be joined by our partner, Meridith Rose from HomeTele SLP. She will have a presentation and then we'll answer questions at the end of the program. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. Meredith Rose, MSCC SLP, is a pediatric speech language pathologist and owner of HomeTele SLP, which was founded in June of 2020. She was inspired to become a speech language pathologist over 20 years ago, following her youngest brother's diagnosis with an autism spectrum disorder. She strives to improve her clients' communication skills through the implementation of fun yet functional therapy activities that are culturally responsive in their school or home environment via teletherapy.
Morning, everyone. And before we get started, I'm just going to make sure that we all have our audio muted. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Miriam, again, as she said, my name is Meredith Rose, and I am a pediatric speech and language pathologist. And I'm so excited to share with you my presentation today on speech and language developmental milestones, specifically focusing today on children ages 3 to 4. So if you were here last month and you learned a lot about what those milestones look like for children who are between the ages of 2 and 3. And so in just a moment, once I get screen sharing permissions, I am going to share that presentation with you. But one thing that I like to do before I get started, and since there's such a small group of you all, if you could please type in the chat, but if you could please type in the chat the age of the child who you are here for today. Maybe they're 3 or about to turn 3, or they're 4 about to turn 5. That would be really helpful information, as well as your role. Are you a parent? Are you a grandparent? Are you a godparent? Are you an early educator? If so, please put that information in the chat for me. It really helps me to guide my focus during the presentation. So if I know that we have more parents in the room versus maybe there are a couple of early educators, and many of us wear many hats, so maybe you're all of the above. But that information is extremely helpful. And I see one person has shared their mom. Good morning. Thanks, Mom, for being here and for sharing that information, as well as the age. So your child is 4. Thank you very much. And just give me one moment while I share my screen. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I wanted to make sure we were up and running, and we are. And as you will see, I have something new to share. If you were at last month's presentation, you're familiar with what I'm about to show you. But if not, I'm going to talk a little bit about an app. So if you have your phone handy and you're able to take a picture of this next screen, I would love for you to do so. This is the CDC Milestone Tracker app, and it is a wonderful tool, and I will tell you why. So when you download this from your app store, whether you have an Apple or an Android device, you will see that you're going to be able to track your child's milestones from age 2 months to 5 years using the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC's easy to use checklists that are embedded in the app. You'll also be able to get tips from the CDC to support your child's development and find out what to do if you ever have concerns about your child's development. So that first point of contact is going to always be your child's pediatrician. So during your well visits or sick visits, if you ever have questions and concerns related to speech and language development, and perhaps you want to find out if your child needs to be referred for an assessment or screening, then that is the first place to have that conversation. So from birth to age 5, your child should reach milestones in how he or she plays, learns, speaks, acts, and moves. And there are photos and videos in the CDC Milestone Tracker app that will illustrate each milestone, and it'll make tracking them for your child easy and fun. Spanish photos and videos are also coming soon. So please check this wonderful free resource out. All right, so I would like to provide an overview of our presentation before we get started, which is very similar to what was covered for children ages 2 to 3 years of age. But one exception is in regard to feeding. Feeding developmental milestones will not be covered during today's presentation for children between 3 and 4, as these milestones are typically achieved by the age of 3. So, as I said before, if you do have concerns, however, regarding not only feeding milestones, but any of the things that are going to be covered during this presentation, please make sure that you share your concerns with your child's pediatrician. So, first, I would like to discuss the importance of hearing screenings, which can be performed at your child's pediatrician's office or an ear, nose, and throat office or ENT's office, and the impact that hearing disorders can have on speech development. Hearing screenings are critical for identifying hearing loss or hearing disorders early in a child's life. And why is that so important? Well, because without us having the ability to hear well, we end up having difficulty in speaking and hearing the sounds that are being produced and being able to produce them accurately ourselves. So the early detection and management of hearing issues can significantly influence a child's life in terms of their speech and language development. And then as they're getting older, their academic performance and just their overall quality of life. So that is something that I always want to make sure that parents are aware of. Make sure your child has had hearing screenings if you have questions related or concerns related to their speech and language. So, in summary, in terms of what speech is and what language is, the terms speech and language are often used interchangeably, and they do differ because they refer to different aspects of communication. So, speech is the physical act of producing sounds, and that includes articulation, how we actually enunciate and pronounce sounds, as well as voice, the area of voice, if the quality of our voice sounds raspy or maybe hoarse, maybe hypernasal or hyponasal, and fluency. So, like the smoothness of our ability to speak and how the words flow out of our mouth without us stuttering. So fluency, voice, and articulation all fall under that umbrella of speech. Now, language is the broader system of communication, and that includes understanding words, or what we call receptive language, and using or expressing words, which we refer to as expressive language. And so using words and sentences and having the social use of language, or pragmatics, also known as social skills, are all very fundamental blocks to language. So now we're going to transition, now that we have kind of covered a little bit about the difference between speech and language, and we're going to talk specifically about speech first. So this is a chart, and it just shows the age of speech sound acquisition. And as you can see, there is variability in terms of how early or how late each sound is required. So if we look at the top left side of this chart, you'll see that the first several rows, of speech sounds should be attained by the age of 3. And these are very early developing sounds that a child will acquire. And we call these first few bilabial. So when the lips come together, 2 lips bilabial, and they're at the front, these sounds, the placement of our lips, these sounds are produced in the front of our mouth. And so P, M, B, those, and W, W, the W sound, those are all sounds that are very early. So is the sound for H and N. So as you can see, the further we go down, the later some of these sounds may be acquired. There's variability to this, however, as some children may develop some later developing sounds earlier than anticipated, and some may develop them later. So when we think about speech sounds, we can have different types of errors that are produced. Sometimes we can have words that are substituted. Sometimes there are sounds during speech production that are omitted or left out. Some sounds, while produced, can be distorted by a child who is acquiring these new sounds into their sound system. And then sometimes sounds are added. And so we're going to talk about what it looks like when a child has a speech sound disorder, or maybe they have a phonological disorder. So, talking about phonological patterns is where we're going to head next. And these processes on the left are described in the middle column, and then an example of each process is listed in the far right column. So, if we look at the first one, that process or pattern of error, speech sound error, is called unstressed syllable deletion because it describes when a child omits or drops off a weak syllable in a word. And an example of that is the word banana. So in banana, the weak syllable is the first syllable, the ba. So many times we will hear children pronounce the word banana as nana, right? I'm sure some of you all have heard maybe your own child or a child that you know use nana. And other words that are multi-syllable words may be shortened or reduced to just two syllables. And so when this happens, before the age of 3, it's normal. So these are all sounds that should be I'm sorry, these are all processes that should have disappeared by the time the child is 3, maybe a little bit after 3. Um, but I want to give you an idea of different activities that you can do at home with your child to help them in producing sounds in different position of words. So, in the essence of time, we will focus on one phonological pattern on each subsequent slide. And then I'll give you an idea of several things that are very easy for you to incorporate in your home environment. So let's talk about some fun articulation games that you can do. You can go on a sound treasure hunt in your home. You can hide objects around the house that start with different sounds, or maybe you're focusing specifically, for example, with this first process, you're focusing on multi-syllable words. So you can find things with your child that are hidden around the house that have the multi-syllable. So let's say the word is banana, and there are bananas in the kitchen. There's a banana hiding in a particular spot. The child finds a banana. Ah, what did we find? We found that, and they say Nana, and you model for them banana. And so one helpful strategy is to use something called backward chaining. And that simply means that we start at the end of the word and we work backwards in producing it. So for banana, we would say na, then nana, then banana. So when we're working backwards, it tricks the brain. It's really funny, but it actually works. And your child is actually able to produce that sound, chaining it backward, a lot easier than going forward. Banana. So when they say it backwards, na, and then you have them repeat na, nana, nana, banana. It's easier for them to try to articulate that. All right, so we're going to talk about cluster reduction next. That's the first process listed. And it's described as when we omit one or more consonants and a sequence of consonants. So here's an example, clean. Another one that is really easy for kids to mess up is spaghetti, right? Something common that they eat, but it's also a multi-syllable word. So we have two things going on. We have multi-syllables, we have the cluster in the front. But for example, what would happen is in the word clean, the L would be reduced or dropped off so that there's only a K being pronounced instead of the KL blend. So they might say keen instead. There are many different clusters like snake, SN, SP, and the word spoon, and the list goes on and on. So anytime we have two consonants together, those are considered clusters. So one thing that I find to be helpful is to provide a child with some type of tactile prompt or a touch prompt, and also giving them visual cues so that when they're pronouncing a cluster, they can actually hear and see the sound. So maybe for the word snake, I might do something like snake. And I'm separating it and prolonging those sounds so they can see and feel the S And then I'm prompting them so that their tongue is at the top of their mouth. They know that we're looking in the mirror perhaps for this activity. So standing in a mirror, doing mirror play with your child while making or practicing different sounds can be really fun. And you can even have flashcards, and maybe you play a game, and every time you take a turn to pull a card of a letter, you practice making that sound. And you can practice blending them. So you can put like an S and an N letter card together. The next thing I want to do is talk about these are some additional phonological patterns. So the first one that we have up here is the word or process denasalization, which is when we change a nasal sound to a non-nasal sound. And in simple terms, that means like an M or an N sound. Mm is nasal. It's a nasal sound. You can feel it in your nose area. And it becomes something that's not an M or an N. So in the example here, mat becomes bat. So that M becomes a B. Still in the front of the mouth, but the way that that sound is made is in a completely different way. So this is something that is again, supposed to disappear by the age of 3. But as we go down in that far right column, we can see that there are certain sounds that are more likely to disappear as a child turns 3 and 4 years of age. And we can see in that second to last row, cluster reduction. So in this particular example, they're talking about clusters that don't involve an S. So maybe we're talking about clusters that have R's in them, like in the word grape. So that G and that R are reduced to just the G, and then we have gape instead of grape. So these are the ages around in which we see these disappearing. So here are some other activities that you can do at home. Maybe you have a particular book that targets some of these processes that are really difficult for your child. You know that they have a tendency to reduce clusters, and there's a book that has a lot of clusters in it. So then during story time, you can read that book, emphasize the target sound, pause to highlight and repeat the words with these sounds, right? Stretch them out, and also do interactive storytelling. So you're telling the story to your child, and you're asking your child to listen for and repeat words with specific sounds. That's a really great way to train their ear. So maybe as we read this story about the grape escape, right? Every time they hear the word grape, they're pointing out the word grape. Like, oh yeah, there's that GR blend we've been practicing, or whatever it might be. So there's another idea of how you can incorporate storytelling or book reading while targeting these different sounds. Another fun thing you can do as you look at this, these are some much later phonological patterns, but I do want to talk about sound collages. So these are really fun. You can take pictures from magazines, cut them out, or even from maybe if you still get newspapers at home or shopping ads, or maybe when you're at the store, you're intentional and you grab one, right? Cut them out and make a sound collage. So all the different pictures are going to have tons of different sounds, especially if you're going to a grocery store and getting one of those ads. So tons of different words, different sounds in the beginning, middle, and end, and you can practice targeting those particular sounds. Maybe there's certain sounds your child is going to look for that start with the letter T, the letter B, and you're going to circle them and practice saying them. All right, so when we think about the sound errors that I talked about and the pattern of errors that occur, also known as phonological processes, we start to think about, okay, how intelligible is this kid or this child when they're speaking because of their speech sound errors? Maybe it impedes the ability for others to understand them clearly when they're speaking, and maybe it leads to some communication frustration too. So there are certain expectations when it comes to speech intelligibility. One thing to remember is that when a child produces speech sound errors consisting of what I said earlier, substituting sounds, omitting or leaving out sounds, deleting sounds, or adding sounds, the intelligibility of their speech will decrease. And it will continue to decrease as the length of their utterances increase. So, saying a word or speaking at word level when they're little using words and phrases, they're a little bit more easy to understand at word level than at phrase level, right? When they're putting two, three, and four words together at sentence level and then building into like a paragraph at conversational speech level. So the more words going from word level to phrase level to sentence to conversational level speech, the more words that they're producing together, the less intelligible their speech will be if they still have, some developmental speech sound errors. So that is not uncommon. And it's also not uncommon for mom, dad, sister, brother, those individuals who live in the home to have a really keen ear as to their sound system and what they mean when they say certain things. So maybe, out in public, others may have a more difficult time understanding your child, but because you know their sound system, your ears kind of trained to be able to understand what they mean, even when they say something with a speech sound error. So now we're going to talk a little bit about pronouns. And pronouns for children between the ages of 3 to 4 that they should have are right here. So 36 months to 48 months, these two rows here, 35 to 40 and 41 to 46. And maybe they're starting to use maybe not per se herself and himself, but maybe your child is, starting to acquire some additional pronouns from this last row. But the ones that primarily we would focus on are things like hers and his, them, they, it, all of these other pronouns here listed in the row below for 41 to 46 months. And so you can really emphasize pronouns while you're reading books together. You can point to characters in the books and you can kind of model the pronoun by saying, oh, look, he is sleeping. What is he doing? And then your child can kind of model that use of he is and answer that question. Oh, he is eating. Look, they are playing. What are they playing? They are playing ball. So modeling using pronouns is really helpful to help your child when they're answering the question to use the pronoun as well. And so you can also do story retelling at the end of the story, right? So maybe you read the story from beginning to end to your child and you're having some conversation while you're reading. But at the end, you can go back and kind of just take a picture walk and say, oh, do you remember what was happening here? Who is eating? Was he eating or was she eating? And it's really hard sometimes for children to differentiate between pronouns he and she. And so they may oftentimes swap them. But again, modeling and lots of repetition and practice will help to solidify the pronouns. Okay, so now we're going to move on to morphology. And this is just the study of how word units are put together, or word units, such as what we sometimes, I'm sorry, refer to word units as our morphemes. So when you hear word units or morphemes, think about like the endings of words, how we might add an ing or an s or an ed. Many times, children who are learning how to use verbs and make them present progressive or ing verbs, we'll say we'll just say cry instead of crying. So in this first row, we have an example. They're not quite, used to knowing how the language works and adding the ing to the end. But with lots of practice and exposure, I love using flashcards of action verbs. Children will start to understand that we put certain endings on the end of words. So here is an idea of something that you can do to work on present progressive ing. So in our example of crying, you could create a photo album with your child with pictures of family members or favorite characters from books doing various activities. Or maybe you describe pictures with them using the ing words as you're going through, right? Like a storybook with their favorite characters or making a photo album with family members doing different activities. So one thing that you could do during the weekend is grab your phone and let them go around the house and find people doing action words. So maybe they're taking a picture of the dog eating. Maybe they're taking a picture of dad drinking coffee. Maybe they're taking a picture of sister or brother reading, or someone is sleeping. And then you can print those pictures out off of your phone or off of your phone and put them into a photo album, or just make a collage, right? Take those pictures, put them on some construction paper, and you have a collage of different action verbs. So there are a bunch of ways that you can work on these morphemes. So, for example, plural S, you can have pictures of one object, two objects, three objects, and you talk about what you see. I see one car. I see two cars. Maybe you are just actually playing with objects and you're finding a lot of the same objects around the house. So you have balls, or you have toys, different toys. And so you're talking about the difference of if you have one versus if you have two, to kind of help them to realize when you're adding that S to the end of the word. All right, let's talk about the different stages of um, language development in terms of the length of your child's utterance. So, there are some different activities that you can do to help increase the length of your child's utterance. If we look down at towards the bottom of the chart, we'll see that for children 35 to 40 months of age and 41 to 46 months of age, they should be using somewhere between 3 and 4.5 words. And so if your child is using 2 words and you're trying to get them to use a longer length of utterance, one of the things that's really helpful is to model for them, or to give them like a prompt to use. Maybe you're using the words I see, and then they're just adding a third word to it. So you can play I spy with my little eye. I see a blank. Your turn. What do you see? I see a bird. So if you're giving them that sentence, kind of to start off, or that phrase to start off the sentence that they're building, that is really helpful. We're going to talk now a little bit about social skills, or pragmatic language. So, pragmatics is the study of speaker listener interactions and how we use our language in different environments. And when it comes to social language skills, or pragmatics, it looks a little bit different for kids who are 3 to 4 years old. So some of the milestones that we have listed here are things like taking turn during play. Oh, lots of fun, right? Sometimes if we have a favorite toy, it's hard to take turns during play. But that is actually a milestone for children of this age. Play-based milestones, playing next to a peer, playing with a peer, sharing, taking turns, all of those things. So, one thing that you can do is play board games together. That's a great way to tackle, or to specifically target, excuse me, turn taking. So when you're playing simple board games, like maybe Candyland, or any other game, you're doing a my turn, your turn type of verbal interaction with your child. So you're going to model for them, whose turn is it? Is it your turn? Or is it my turn? Oh, it's my turn. Okay. And then whose turn is it next? Oh, it's your turn. So that's both a skill, right? Taking turns, but also using that language is really great. We can also perhaps engage in photo album stories, where you having your child to talk about different pictures of what they see happening between different people. I'm looking at a list of different activity ideas to share with you guys. Oh, another great one is puppet shows. I don't know if we still have puppets, but growing up we had puppets at home, or we made puppets with socks, or we used our stuffed animals and we had little puppet shows, or we just kind of like used imaginary play and acted out scenes and stories. That's another great way. Turn taking can happen that way, through conversation, as your child is narrating what's happening. This can even be with their toys, like action figurines. So now we're going to talk about literacy, and language and literacy go hand in hand. So literacy is the ability to read and write, And language and literacy are connected. If a child has speech or language problems, then they may have trouble learning to read and write. And so we definitely want to make sure that children who do have language disorders are receiving services. So as you know, as to not impact their language in other areas. So here are a couple of activities that you can do with your child to help them to develop their literacy skills. I think it's really nice to make sure that you're beginning to introduce your child to multiple types of literacy materials. So maybe around the house, there are magazines, there are newspapers. A lot of people don't have them as much, but newspapers, flyers from the grocery store, books from the library, books in your own home library. And so you can use any of these materials to help your child to begin paying attention to print, and I'm referring to letters, right, that are in print on these materials. And so maybe you're having them to go on a letter hunt where the only thing you're looking for are the letters in their name, or maybe the first letter in their name, something really simple. Let's look through this book, or let's look through this flyer and see if we can find the first letter in your name, William. Let's see if we can find a W. Or let's go on a letter hunt around the house and see what things we can find in the house that have or begin with the letter W. Um, you can also have your child to practice recognizing logos and other environmental print, to make sure that they understand that print also carries a message. So we have the golden arch, and we know that's McDonald's, right? We have that C, the white and red C, and that's Chick-fil-A, just all these different logos, car logos, etc. And so your child can practice making a collection of common logos, pictures of common logos, and they can play a matching game with it. So, oh, this is for Target. Oh, this one is for, can you find the one that's for McDonald's? Okay, your turn. Let's see. You tell me what to find. Can you find the one that's for Volkswagen, Mama? Yes, there's one. So you're just kind of taking turns talking about what the logos represent. So print awareness is not just words, it's also logos too. Another thing that you can do is you can practice matching sounds and letters. So sounds of letters, excuse me, and the letter sounds that represent them. So phonemes are sounds and graphemes are letters. So matching the sounds to the actual letters. Maybe you have puzzles at home, or building blocks, or alphabet blocks at home. You can use those to practice what sound does this letter make? Or I'm looking for a block that has a letter that makes the sound. Can you help me find it? Is it this one, the letter T? Does it make the sound, or is it the letter M? And so whether it's blocks or it's flashcards, you can use all of these different materials to do this activity with letter and sound matching. All right, so we talked about phonological awareness skills, phonological awareness skills a little bit earlier, when I mentioned, for example, phonological errors with multisyllable words. So here we're going to talk about this first skill called syllable segmentation. So think about the word banana. We talked about that being a multisyllable word. Well, phonological awareness skills is the ability to manipulate the structure of an utterance separate from its meaning. So it's an auditory task. And so if you can practice this with your child by maybe having them to, for the example of multisyllable words, clap out a syllable. So in the word banana, they can count how many syllables they hear. 1, 2, 3. Banana has 3. What about butterfly? Does that have 3? Yeah, it does. Butterfly has 3. So being able to identify the number of syllables in a word is one skill. Another one is rhyming. And around this age, children are exposed to many nursery rhymes, right? Which have the rhyming words in them. So then that is a great opportunity to say, what word rhymes with cat? Is it hat? Is it bat? And so these are just some examples of different phonological awareness skills that you see listed here on this chart. So with rhyming, one thing that I like to do is to kind of leave a blank for the child to say the word that rhymes. So in the nursery rhyme, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, for example, I might say, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, how I wonder what you are. That's right. R rhymes with star. So, kind of like singing different nursery rhymes, putting a blank there, and then pointing out, oh, those words sound the same. Those are rhyming words. All right, we're going to skip past that and talk about concepts. So, knowing and understanding basic concepts is a foundational component of language development, and basic concepts can include all sorts of things: color, shape, size, quantity, the number of things, time, for example. And so we have here a list of different milestones that children would be acquiring between the ages of 3 and 4 years old. So things like following directions that include concepts such as find the ones that are the same, or find the one that is empty, understanding spatial concepts like next to, beside, and between. We talked about colors, so like identifying colors, matching colors, etc. These are all some examples of milestones, and I'm going to provide you with a couple of activities that you can do specifically to target some of these concepts. So maybe during snack time, you can use small snacks like cereal or crackers and ask your child to show you an empty hand and then show a hand with lots of snacks. So like, oh, let me see, give me your hands. Oh, I'm gonna give you 3 snacks in this hand. What about your other hand? Does it have snacks? No, it's empty. Can you put all of the snacks in both of your hands? Can you put them together? Oh, okay. Maybe that's a really bad example. But let's talk about maybe matching. So following equality directions, like same in both. You can play a matching game and use cards or objects to find pairs that are the same. So when you're targeting the word same versus different, you can look for ones that are the same. Are they the same color? Or are they different colors? Oh, this one is blue and this one is yellow. These are different. Oh, look, this one's blue. This one's blue. These are the same. So you can do that with all sorts of things, pictures, objects. Oh, let's talk about how we can target using concepts like next to, beside, or between. You can use stuffed animals, right? Different stuffed animals, and practice putting them in different positions. Like, oh, let's put the lion between the bear and the snake. Between means in the middle. Can you put it in the middle? Very good job. Or maybe you have one object, right? And they have a few other objects separate from that object. Maybe there are objects on the table, but you have this one object by itself, and you have them taking not turns, but you have them practicing one at a time with these different objects, putting them next to whatever's on the table. So maybe there's a stuffed animal bear on the table, and you tell them, okay, put the ball next to the bear. Oh, very good. Okay, let's take it away. Now we're going to look at the other items that we have over here. Can you find the car? Put the car next to the bear. Oh, very good. Okay, put it away. You're going to just kind of take turns rotating through all these other objects and just practice following directions with targeting the concepts of next to, or beside, or between, or whatever those particular concepts may be that you're working on. So as children are getting older, as you can see here on this chart, between 12 months and 12 years, their vocabulary is growing exponentially, right? So maybe they're starting out with just a few words in their repertoire, and then they're building to maybe 100, a few hundred, a couple of thousand, and before you know it, their vocabulary has grown very fast, very rapidly. And so we do know that expressive vocabulary does grow quite rapidly from the time of the child's first word until they're in first grade. So their vocabulary increases throughout a lifetime and it becomes more varied based on the experiences that they have, the things that are in their environment, etc. And especially when they're reading, right? Language and literacy is so key because when they're reading, they're being introduced to new words and new ideas, etc. So, here are a couple of activities that you can do with your child for developing their expressive vocabulary. Um, you can go on a nature walk, get them outside, get them moving, take a walk and talk about what you see, right? So your child could be labeling things that they see that are nouns, right? People, places, things, but also introduce some other parts of speech, like adjectives. Talk about the colors of something, or maybe how the weather feels, or what people are doing outside while you're going on your nature walk. Maybe there are people who are driving, or people who are walking a dog, or running, or maybe they're I don't know, flying a kite. They could be doing anything, but your child is going to just kind of take in what's in the environment. So you can change it up like, okay, so for the next 5 minutes while we're walking, we're going to look for things that are moving. Okay, now we're going to look for things that are the color green, so kind of just switch it up and maybe move from talking about colors to shapes to sizes to action words so that your child is not just talking about nouns, things that they see. And then you can model for them the sentence structure. So I see, or I hear, right? Or I smell. Oh, so it's kind of endless. You can incorporate the senses for sure while you're going on a nature walk with your child. And we're moving towards the end, and we only have, I think, two more topics or areas that we're going to cover. And the next one is questions. So first, we're going to talk about answering questions and how you can help your child and better answering who questions, why and where questions, how questions, etc. And then we'll talk about asking questions next. So, why questions can be a little bit tricky, but during story time, you could read a short story or a picture book together and then ask your child simple questions about the story. So, for example, maybe you're reading a story about a bear, excuse me, and in the story, the bear gets sad. And so you can ask your child, why do you think the bear is sad? Maybe the bear is sad because he dropped his pot of honey, right? You can kind of help them to infer or to guess why something is happening or what do you think is going to happen next. Before we turn the page, let's come up with a couple of ideas. What do you think is going to happen? Oh, I think this is going to happen. Do you think that could happen? Yeah. What else do you think could happen? So just kind of give them plenty of opportunities to answer different types of questions while you're reading. Who questions and what questions are great, where questions are great, but also working on when and how and why questions. So let's see. Another activity that you could do to work on answering these types of questions is playing an observation game. So maybe let's get outside again. You go for a walk and you're pointing out various things like flowers that are growing, animals. Maybe you see squirrels going up and down the tree or dogs who are being walked, cars going by. And you can prompt your child by asking, why do you think it's raining? Or why do you think it's so hot? Or why do you think that car is moving? Just any kind of why questions, just to get their minds going. But hopefully, it's a why question that you can actually answer, right? Um, and then you can, just kind of have them take turns and ask you why questions as well. The next one is answering questions. Oh, we did that one. So we're going to move to listening. I'm sorry. So the last area that we're going to focus on are listening skills. And listening is something that is not the same as hearing. So listening and hearing are different because listening skills involve a child's ability to, attend to and focus and process what they're hearing. So these skills are integral components of a child's speech and language, as well as their social and academic development, right? So when they're in school and a teacher is teaching, if they're having a hard time listening, then that's gonna impact them, impact their academic performance. So let's talk about some of these milestones here for children 3 to 4 in the area of listening. So one of them would be, for example, if a child is in another room, they're responding to their name, they're understanding simple WH questions. We talked about basic WH questions like who, what doing, where questions, and then some higher level ones like why and how. And then they're also improving their listening skills and they're beginning to learn from their listening. So when they're school age, they're able to do more of that attending and listening and learning. So hide and seek is an activity that I have in mind. You can play hide and seek where you call out your child's name and have them find you based on where you're located in the house. You can do a story time activity where you're asking them some questions. Maybe you're reading a short story or you're looking at a picture book and you're asking your child simple WH questions about stories or pictures. These are all listening activities. Who is this? What is he doing? Where is the cat? Maybe you're doing some exploration while you're out and about running errands at the park or at the grocery store. Um, you can ask your questions. I'm sorry, you can ask your child questions that are related to their surroundings. So, what do you see? Where are we now? Who is with us? You can go on a listening walk. You can take a walk and ask your child to listen for different sounds, talk about what you heard. And then you can also play following direction type games. So maybe you play a game where you give your child simple directions to follow and you start off with one step directions, right? And then once they've accomplished and they've mastered that skill set, you can move on to 2 step directions, like go to your room and put your shoes in the closet, or go downstairs and bring me the book that's on the table. So, different 1 step, 2 step, 3 step directions you can build along the way. Um, oh, and here's a fun one. Sing along songs where you have to do different body movements like head, shoulders, knees, and toes, right? You have to listen in sequence and do it in the right order. So there are a few examples of how you can tackle or target, excuse me, that particular concept of listening, working on those skills. So, to conclude, I want to take us back to where we started. For those of you who may have joined our presentation a little bit late, I talked about the CDC, or the Center for Disease Control and Prevention's Milestone Tracker app. This is a really great milestone app for children between the ages of 2 months to 5 years. It's easy to use. So take a picture of this if you have your phone handy, or write down the name of this app. It includes easy to use checklists. You'll get tips from the CDC to support your child's development, and you'll find out what to do if you ever have concerns about your child's development. So one thing that I really love about this is the milestones are not just language and speech. These are milestones related to how your child plays, how they learn, how they speak, how they act, how they move, right? It's all encompassing. And there are also photos and videos in the app that illustrate each milestone and make tracking them, a lot easier and fun. And then if you have questions, when you go to your pediatrician for their annual checkup, their annual wellness visit, or maybe they have, you know, some things that are concerning. And so you're seeing your pediatrician for a sick visit, but you can always ask them if you have concerns related to speech and language for a referral for evaluation. And one other thing I wanted to add that's really great about this app is they're starting to, I can't remember if they've done it already, but they're starting to include Spanish photos and videos. So I thank you for coming and joining me today for this presentation on communication milestones for children 3 to 4 years old. Again, I'm Meredith Rose, pediatric speech and language pathologist of HomeTele SLP. Please follow us on social media to learn more and receive notification of our future events. And I am also available to provide presentations to mom groups, to parent groups, to early childhood learning centers, and more. And I really hope that you have fun communicating with your child. One of the things that, if I didn't mention it earlier, I do want to say is provide natural models, right? So when your child is speaking and you're maybe trying to correct something that they said, provide that feedback by modeling for them what it is that you want for them to hear, how a word is pronounced or how you put together a phrase or a sentence. So if the child is saying something like "Mama, car," you say, "Oh yeah, car. I see the red car. The car moves fast. Vroom vroom, go car." So whether it's speech sounds or it's language and putting words together, always provide natural models. Your child will definitely respond to that well. Thank you so very much.
Okay, well, now if anybody has any questions for Meredith, you are welcome to type them into the chat box. So she's here for you all to answer whatever question you have.
If there are not any questions, I do want to take a moment to wish everyone a wonderful, safe, productive, and exciting school year. It's hard to believe we're starting early this year. I see that there are some educators in the room. Thank you for all that you do, and thanks to our parents for supporting our children's learning.
Looks like we do have a question from Janelle. What speech development trends have you observed among children born near or during COVID?
So one thing that we have noticed is that during COVID, as you all I'm sure recall, we were masked as educators. Children were masked if they could, wear a mask, and so a lot of times children were missing out on the visual cues, right? When it comes to speech production, a lot of what we learn is by observing. And so seeing where sounds are produced, not only at school, but just like in the environment, with a lot of people being masked, that was one thing that was noticed. Um, and there's still a lot of research that's coming out about some of the impacts on children's development during that time in terms of speech and language. But we have seen that in terms of language, which is related, that there have been some very clear differences between children's speech and language development pre-pandemic and during and post-pandemic. Thank you for your question. Would limited peer interactions have delayed development? Oh my goodness. So in terms of social skills, not having that interaction with peers, especially younger children, some things may be a little bit delayed in terms of speech and language development. Social skills, pragmatics is part of language development. So, it all depends on if the child was still having exposure to other peers, friends, or if they kind of, maybe they have no siblings at home and they live by themselves, those interactions weren't there and there wasn't a way to facilitate them. Um, these are great questions. Thank you. I will say that there's always the interaction between parent and child, but of course that varies, right? So yeah, peer interactions, if they were limited during that time, there may be delays. Wow. Yeah. Not having peers or friends at the time would definitely make that difficult. And interacting with individuals via Zoom is not the same as in-person interactions where you're able to read body language, etc. You're welcome. Thank you for your questions. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
If we don't have any other questions, I think we're going to go ahead and end our session for today. Thank you all for joining us this morning. We hope that you gained some useful information for you to use with your child at home. Thank you, Meredith, for this wonderful and informative presentation. We really appreciate it. We hope to see you again. Our last session that we're going to have is on August 24th at 11. Again, thank you so much for joining us this morning, and we hope to see you all soon. Bye, everyone.